All right, so welcome to this week's edition of Sales Club for 3D Pro Services. Today's session is a little bit of my own twist on overcoming objections. There's so many sales books out right now. There's Spin Selling, Guerrilla Selling, Stephen Covey, Zig Ziglar, Anthony Pernelli, even the bike book written by Dave Sandler. There's so many things out there, and I don't think there's a book on sales that doesn't have some chapter or some content devoted to how to overcome objections. Most salespeople, when they look at sales training, that's what they think it is. How do I overcome the objections that I tend to get? Um, so today's session is a little bit on how to do that, but thinking about it this way, in that when you hear on TV shows like LA Law or any of the shows that have to do with law, you see in the courtroom, you see the lawyer object. I object. Well, actually, in law, there are certain legal challenges where you can object, and they basically are: I object on the basis of leading, I object on speculation, I object on calls for speculation or hearsay, or I object, they can't answer, the question was asked and answered. I object the relevance, argumentative, non-responsive, compound, and narrative. And we're going to go through each one of these things because this is exactly what each category is that our prospects do to us. Their objection fits into one of these 10 things. And so we need to talk about how to respond to it. So what I want you to think about, an effective salesperson is really just an effective communicator. Somebody communicates well, but if you understand active listening, and there's all kinds of courses on active listening. I can sum up active listening in one slide, and that is just repeating the message back to the sender. I think you said, or did I get it? Do I understand? That's what an effective communicator is actually listens. It's like the old line, God gave you two ears and one mouth, meaning you should listen twice as much as you speak. So effective communicator is really listening instead of trying to talk and get their point across. An effective communicator recognizes and deal with three things. Remember, the name of my company, it's 3D Pro Services. Everything's in threes. So when you get an objection, it is either a distortion, it is a deletion of information, or it's a generalization. Thinking about these three, every objection you get fits into one of these categories. So distortions must be challenged. Distortions are things like, oh God, all you building contractors are all alike, or I can't trust any contractor. All these contractors are just, chasing after the next hailstorm. That's a distortion of the truth. So it must be challenged where somebody says, all you contractors are all alike, you're just money, I appreciate you saying that. Help me understand, what's your past experience that would make you say that? Right. And we challenge this distortion that they've created for us. Um, so think about what it is, and you can do it nurturingly. When they distort the information of what's going on, it's you do have to challenge it. Say, I'm curious, I appreciate you saying that, but why would you say that? Or what makes you think that I'd fit into that category? What have you heard about me? That kind of thing. Deletions must be recovered. What I mean by that, sometimes they're deleting information or facts, and we know it. We're getting the sense that they're deleting the fact that they've already had 6 contractors come in. They've already dealt with 3 other vendors, and they've gotten bids already. Because when you start getting a client who's really, really educated, it must be because they've done some research already and they've talked to somebody, but they don't want to tell you that. So they're deleting information. For example, when I was a Sandler franchisee, the unwritten rule among franchisees was we don't bird dog somebody else's account. But somebody would call up and talk to one franchisee in an area and say, well, what's the cost for President's Club? And the person would say $12,000. Well, and then somebody'd call me and say, what do you charge for President's Club? Interesting to use that term. How would you even know what President's Club is? Oh, I talked to another trainer. Gee, and what did they tell you? Well, they told me it's 10,000. Gee, and what, was that too high? So you can get into the question. They deleted a lot of information and didn't want to tell me. So you have the right to recover that deleted information if you feel they're not giving you the full story. And again, a really educated consumer who starts using terms that were industry specific You got to understand he's probably, or this person has probably already done some conversation with somebody else. And that's information we'd like to know, because then we can sit there and say, well, if you did talk to somebody already, why didn't you go with them? And it could be things like, well, I went walking through the home show. I went through all of I talked to a bunch of different vendors at a home show and got educated there. Any reason you didn't pick one of those people at the home show? Well, they didn't give me the right vibe or whatever, which is information we'd love to have. And then generalizations must be specified. We got to get the specific information when they make a generalization. So those are the three things that we want to think about: deletions, distortions, and generalizations. And to be effective with the client, you must discover the real questions before you answer a question. Uncover the real answers to your questions. What I mean by that is you have the right, when somebody asks questions, to reverse them and say, that's an interesting question. I'm curious, why did you ask that? Why did they ask that question? Was there, because sometimes we answer questions incorrectly. And the example I give is kind of like in your trades is, well, how long have you been in business? And we were proudly thinking we're going to answer that. Oh, I've been in business 20 years. But what the client was really thinking is, are you versed on new technology? Are you still doing it the old way? Do you understand green technology? So they ask a question. We think we're heroes by answering it, and we didn't understand what the real question was. So that's why you always stroke, repeat, reverse. Stroke, repeat, reverse to find out the real question before you answer it incorrectly. I've had one guy one time called me right when COVID hit and said, so are you doing all of your trainings remotely? And if I had said, well, yes, because his response was, well, I don't think that works. I think it has to be live instructor train. So, you got to understand why they're asking the questions before you go any further. So there are objections in the legal field. So let's go through the top 10 and we'll talk about it this way. Leading. The objection the lawyer might say is, I object, Your Honor, leading the witness. Well, in sales, they might ask you a leading question like, you want to save money, don't you? Do you ever have a salesman say that to you? Well, if you think about it, that's really leading the witness, if you will. Of course I want to save money. Of course I want to save money. But that's really not the type of question one should be asking. Leading questions are usually prohibitive with some exceptions, like during direct examination, because leading questions assume the answer in the question itself. A leading question that you would give is one that you already know the answer to. You'd want to get this done as soon as possible, wouldn't you? Well, how are they going to answer it? Oh, God, no, I hope it goes on for a year. I love washing dishes in the bathtub. So be careful when you're leading the witness yourself, okay? Speculation. This is where the prospect says, I can probably get it from your competitor cheaper. Now, that's a speculation, isn't it? Unless they've already talked to them and got a price. And witnesses are allowed to testify about facts within their own personal knowledge, but really, they can't give you opinions without basis of information that's really true. When they make a statement like that, again, I can probably get it from your competitor. Here's the key I want you to think about. Anytime you hear a fat word, and a fat word is probably in this sentence, probably, you repeat the past that fat word. I can probably get it cheaper. Help me understand probably. And now it's kind of like the hot potato. Now you've thrown it back into their court and you have to respond. Because what they want you to do is I can probably get it cheaper. Now that's speculation on their part that they could probably get it cheaper. And what they're trying to do is get you to immediately start discounting or to put you on your heels. It's a negotiation ploy is what it is. So when you repeat the fat word, they have to now redefine their question. Help me understand probably. We might be able to, we probably, those are all fat words. So just whatever the fat word is that isn't specific, remember specifications. So if the witness is not an expert in their field and their ability to provide opinions is limited then, isn't it? So as a result, a non-expert witness that goes beyond the facts is where the lawyer gets to say, I object, Your Honor, speculation. Because he's not an expert on this. He's just speculating based on an opinion, not facts. And that's what your clients do to you sometimes, or prospects do to you sometimes. Okay. Even just calls for speculation. This piggybacks on this previous speculation objection where the prospect speculates you might be able to offer a low rate, but now increase the installation later is what they're saying. You're probably just going to give me a low rate now on your design contract. Then you're going to add it into your fee later. Well, again, that calls for speculation on their part. And the lawyer would say, objection calls for speculation. Again, salesperson, you can challenge this speculation with, I appreciate your concern. What experiences caused you to think that you should come to that conclusion? So again, in the people that are listening to this that are in the building trades, when somebody does that, when you're selling a design contract, well, your design contract is $2,000. Well, you're probably just going to add it into the cost somewhere along the way. And you get to, I appreciate that. I can understand your concern. I'm just curious, what makes you think that I really don't do these based on two different sets, one for the design contract and then for actually doing the services on the project? What makes you think that I would have to roll it in? And then if I did, help me understand what would be wrong with that. So you get kind of fun thing here about this is you get to play lawyer. All those lawyer shows you see on TV. Now you get to be one and call for speculation. Hearsay. Hearsay is the option that gives the salespeople the biggest headache. The prospect says, I've heard that you can't stall in the winter because the ground is frozen. You can't build in the winter because the ground is frozen. Well, that's hearsay that they heard this from somebody else. That maybe that's not true. They hear that, well, the freeze line is 52 inches. And if you're going to put poles in for my outdoor deck or you're going to build my gazebo, you can't do it in the wintertime. Interesting. Hearsay is a distortion that must be challenged. Why do you say that? Well, the last guy said you'd have to wait till the spring. Interesting, and you're getting more information now by repeating that, but it was hearsay. You only heard it, but it might not be true. What makes you think that I can't install in the wintertime? What if I had the equipment? I had the auger that could drill right through frozen ground and get below the frost line to put in the footings. So that's what you got to even challenge them on hearsay. Asked and answered, where the prospect says, I know you said the install would be 6 months out, but can you move that up? Well, you already asked and answered it. They already said, when can you do the installation? You go through the process, and now in the middle of the process, the buying process, they haven't committed yet. They try and get you to change on a question that they asked already. So really what happens is sometimes we ask the same question in a different way that we hope to get a different answer. So there may be times when your witness is a little bit doggy and not actually giving you a direct answer. Usually they're deleting some key information. So my response again is very nurturing on this one. And I know a lot of people get this objection. Oh my God, I want you to remodel my basement. You tell me you can't start for 6 months. Can't you start, I really want to get this done by the fall. The response, I can appreciate that. But is there anything that's preventing us from negotiating that deadline you're looking for? And that's very nurturing instead of just saying no. I don't know if you remember one of my earlier trainings I did was about never say no to a prospect. They'll shoot somebody. So never say no when somebody says, oh, God, can't you start this in the next 3 months? No, I can't. Well, done. You're done. Maybe, and then maybe it wasn't really 3 months that they really needed it. If they say something like, well, I wanted 3 months, so I know that it's done by my daughter's wedding in January. Again, now you get more information that they deleted. They didn't want to tell you they could wait till January. They wanted you to feel that it had to be done in 3 months. So nurturingly and this is a great line, make sure you put this one in. Hey, anything that's stopping us from negotiating that deadline, as opposed to saying no. And then if they give you an unreasonable deadline, the response again is, well, if I really could change my production, my schedule of all the other jobs that I have to move you up in my production schedule, what do you think I'd have to do? See, why are we taking all this pressure to perform? Well, let the client say, well, you'd probably have to, tell other people they can't do it. And you probably have to charge me more. Yeah, if I was going to move other jobs and lose other businesses, I could move yours up. I could start tomorrow. But if I really started tomorrow, what would I have to do? Well, you'd probably have some unhappy customers. You'd you'd probably have to charge me a lot more. And now they answered it instead of you. Because then you can say, did that sound reasonable? I mean, if I had to triple the price to move you up in the production schedule, it probably wouldn't be something you'd consider. But yet you didn't say no. Let them be the one. Never end the sales process. Let the client end it by asking those questions. Relevance. Again, in law, the lawyer might challenge relevance of a statement. In sales, relevance should be used sparingly. Don't use it a lot. But if the prospect says, well, you aren't local to us, we only want to buy local. Well, that might not really be relevant to the ability to do the job. The prospect might use that as leverage to get you to reduce. Well, I always want to deal with a local vendor. I don't know if you've ever heard that, but I've talked to a lot of people that say that locally. Well, really, what difference does that make if I'm local? If I can finish and do the job on time at a price you can afford, what difference does it make that I'm local? It's usually just a ploy that people will use this whole thing. Well, I want to use local vendors. I want to support my local businesses. And I can appreciate that you want to, but let's say you had a local business, all right, and local, but his price was higher than mine, and his ability to do the job wasn't as well done as mine. He couldn't solve your problem. Would you still work with a local vendor? Of course not. So you get to really challenge that relevance. Okay. Argumentative. I mean, this is where, think about this, when you get that person who just wants to argue with you. It really, and this is typically a D when we talked about the different styles of behavior, D's, S's, I's, and C's. D's are usually argumentative because they have learned that type of behavior can get them what they want. They have learned to be the aggressor. Again, nurturing mom can talk to rebellious children, right? But rebellious children can't talk to rebellious children. You just have a fight. So when they become argumentative, don't be so eager to fight with them. If your prospect is making good objections, but out of desperation, then you know that you are asking really good questions. If they get frustrated with you, uh, then it knows you're really asking questions that they didn't expect or didn't get from somebody else. And I've had people who say, Wayne, if you answer every question with a question, doesn't it get annoying? You can do it enough that if you're doing it a nurturing, they don't see it. You could hold a sign up and say, I'm I'm asking a lot of questions, and they don't even see it. But if you get to the point where somebody becomes very argumentative, you can just stop, say, hey, Mark, hey, I apologize. Seems like I've crossed the line. Are we at the point of no return? What'll happen is it usually brings the tone down. It usually, no, God, no. Because remember their system. All this goes back to their system. First step in their system is they mislead about their true intentions. Second, they steal. They want to get as much information as you as possible. They want you to become a free consultant. Three, they commit to nothing. So remember, when you start saying like, hey, sounds like I've crossed the point of no return. Are we done? They will say, oh God, no, because they haven't stolen all your free consulting yet. We're using their system against them. So it really can change that person who's argumentative by just saying that. Are we past the point of no return? Apologize, fall on the sword kind of thing. I'm really sorry. I really did something to upset you. Are we done? And then now they're thinking, oh God, I won't get free consulting. I won't get information. So it gets you back in control. Non-responsive. This is one where it's kind of weird, where the prospect doesn't respond because you're trying to get information that they deleted from you, and they don't respond at all. Again, you get to be nurturing with them and understand that, hey, I'm getting the point that you're not responding to my question, or you're not providing me information because you think that it's going to gain me leverage somehow. I apologize if I've come across that way. As we talked about in the upfront contract, the more information I have about the problems you're trying to solve, the budget you're trying to accomplish, the decision making, I can do such a better job of fulfillment. So I apologize that I've put you in a situation that you feel you can't provide this information to me. It's just so I can do a better job of providing the service that you're looking for. Would that make sense? Would that be fair? So anytime you're getting into that situation where you've kind of crossed the line and they're not responding or they're being argumentative, would that make sense? Would that be fair? Because what they're really answering is, would it be fair or does that make sense? Not really your question. Get you back into control. Two more. Compound. On cross-exam, you often hear lawyers ask multiple questions within the same question. For example, you were accepted into law school and then became a lawyer, correct? Well, those are two actual questions. This single question is actually two questions. One, it's a tricky question, says yes if the answer confirms one. Are they confirming both or the other? So an example of compound question is, would that be fair? That makes sense to you. That's how you get to say it. Would that make sense? Would that be fair? That's a compound question you get to ask. But if the client does it to you and the client puts two questions in one statement, you get to separate it. You get to say, hey, I appreciate that, but that's two different questions. Can we separate those and answer those individually? And as we do this, one of the things I forgot to say when I start with, objections are going to happen. We hear them all the time. Wouldn't it be great if there weren't any? I mean, when most people say, boy, overcoming objections, my biggest challenge, overcoming objections. Well, if you bring up the objection before they do, it's so much easier for you to deal with it. So I even sometimes start, hey, before I got started, can we talk about why we might not do business together? And they go, what? Well, typically people work with me because of this, and that. People hire us because of our expertise, our ability to do the job correctly. If this is purely a price-driven transaction, you're probably not going to hire us. Now you're not going to get that objection at the end about price. Deal with it up front. If this is purely a price-driven transaction, you are just, I'll give you an example of my world. I was talking to a guy about detailing my car, and he starts with, well, interior detailing is $400. Oh my! I did the shock and awe. Oh my God, that much money? I just want to detail it so I can take and get a better job, a better price. I'm going to trade it in. I don't care as long as it looks good. I don't care if you go through everything with a fine. He says, I'm going to make that car look like it was brand new, like it's came off the. I said, I don't care. I just want to make it so it looks better for a price like that. Well, again, if he understood what my real reasoning was, he might not have started at $400. If he had said at the beginning, hey, Wayne, you mind if we talk about why some people don't hire me for dealing? If this is purely a price-driven transaction, you're only looking to the lowest minimum job because you're going to trade the car in, I'm probably not the guy for you. I typically spend 5 hours on each car. Now, you might save a couple $100 and would that be worth it to you? And I might have said, you know what, I appreciate that. Yeah, if you're going to spend that much time on it, yeah, to save a couple $100 for a shoddy job, I'd rather go with you. You can start off whatever the objection is typically. So what I ask most people to do as homework after this session is I want you to write down all the objections you typically get. And then just do a stroke, repeat, reverse to it. The idea of that exercise is this: if you write down the objections you've heard, and then you do a stroke, repeat, reverse on how you would have role played it, if what you would have said. The mind is a wonderful, fantastic thing until you get in front of a client and you forget all this stuff you've learned. But if you write it down, it's called kinesthetic learning. For some reason, when you write something down, it goes up your arm and into your brain. And because you wrote it down, it just seems to be, you don't even have to look at it again, but because you wrote it down, it imprints better in your brain. So go ahead and write down every objection you had and how you'd respond to it. Because when we try and just do it verbally or in our heads, we don't do it as well when we get out in the field and we start talking to somebody. So that's the exercise to do. And then the last one, the narrative. And the narrative is tricky to define. You just know it when you see it. It's kind of like what the Supreme Court said about pornography. I can't define it, but I know it when I see it. In court, the lawyer usually objects to a narrative when opposing counsel on cross-examining with their own witnesses, going on and doing a monologue instead of asking questions. So in your world, where the client just starts going on and on with the narrative and just starts talking, and usually this is the one where you walk into the home and the first thing they do is, well, let me show you what I want to do. And they just go through this whole narrative, walking you through everything. and they don't even give you a chance to ask questions or whatever. But again, you get to stop and take their temperature. You get to say, hey, I appreciate that. Do you mind if I ask you some questions? Do you mind if I ask you, a little bit of things? And you can get back into the control instead of them just doing a narrative. So I want you to understand that there's also what's called smoke screening questions. Our early childhood experience have taught us to smoke screen sometimes our questions. Let's see if I can give you an example. Let's see. All right, here's the one. My son had just got his driver's license, and he came to me and he said, and I know it's going to sound like name dropping, but he said, hey, Dad, you were good friends with Leslie Nielsen, the guy from Naked Gun, those movies, the Airplane. And he was a telephone worker with me. And I said, yeah, I told you that Mom and I knew Leslie Nielsen, and you let me watch Naked Gun, right? And I go, yeah. And you know that because even though it was an R-rated movie, you knew that I could handle it. There's, scenes and things in there. I go, yeah. And he started to ask me these questions, and then he drops the real one. So can me and my friends, can I take the car and take 4 of my friends and go see an R-rated movie? He didn't lead with that. He led with other questions. And that's kind of what your clients will do. They will smoke screen questions and sometimes even their answers. And that's why the stroke, repeat, reverse gets you to the real either question or the real answer. Stroke. And so I want you to think about it this way: stroke, repeat, reverse for clarity. Stroke, repeat, reverse for clarity. You can't answer every question with a question because it does get annoying. But if you stroke it, interesting question, great question, glad you asked, I'm curious. All these strokes before, because people like to, at the end of the day, we have a stroke meter and how many strokes we got, somebody telling how great you were or how good you look today. We judge ourselves how many strokes we got. So when you're doing a stroke, repeat, reverse, it's adding to their meter. It's adding to their count. That's a great question. Interesting question. I've been asked that question a lot. I'm just curious. Why did you ask it? Does that make sense? So the idea is just try and ask as many questions as you can, stroke, repeat, reverse for clarity. Okay. Again, the reversing changes the flow of information. I want you to think of reversing like changing the water direction in a water pipe. When you start reversing the question, hey, I'm interesting question. How much do I charge for X, Y, Z? Wow, probably a lot more than you're expecting. Why? What were you expecting? See how the reverse worked? Now you're not giving information, you're getting the information. So it just changes that flow and helps you discover really the intent of a prospect's questions and the real meaning, even if they answer something. So even when they answer your question, you're still stroking, repeating. Interesting answer, 750,000. How'd you come up with that number? See, so, and it's really hard. Sometimes what happens when we do the stroke, repeat, reverse, we're happy with it. We get an answer and then we move on when we should have even stroked that answer, got more information from the person. Walter Cronkite said it best, the old CBS newscaster. He was one of the best interviewers, first one to get Anwar Sadat. And in his book, he said, you can say because 3 times before it gets annoying. And when the client answers a question, well, 750,000, because, well, because that's where I was going to get the money. Because, well, my mother is going to loan us, and then 3 times because look at all the information they give you. After three strikes, you're out, kind of thing. Stop. If a client asks you a question 3 times, stop reversing. What do you charge for such and such? Well, probably more than you thought. No, I'm really curious. What do you charge? I want a number. Interesting. Why it 3 times, then go ahead and answer the question. But until you get to 3, you haven't gotten enough information yet. Again, this reversing helps you discover and really helps the client complete questions that they might have deleted, distorted, or generalized the question or the answer they gave you. So it helps reveal these opportunities that maybe you didn't have either. Remember, the average salesperson, they think their job is benefits and features, to answer the client's questions, to pitch, present. Our job really is to ask more questions and get more information instead of giving it. Now, there is a time to give the information, but that's at fulfillment. Until you've gotten this person to be qualified, you shouldn't be spending a lot of time in fulfillment. Yeah, spit a little candy along the way, drop some breadcrumbs about what you do, but don't do a full presentation too soon. Don't be guilty of that premature presentation yet. Negative reversing, I'll get to that in the future. Negative reversing is a technique that we'd spend a little time on. You got to be careful, master some of these other things first before we start doing a little bit negative, because most people that I try and teach negative reversing to, they're not nurturing enough. It comes across as a little bit too harsh. Negative reversing is just really just doing the opposite of what the client expected.
Can you give it like an example on that?
When the client says to me, well, how do I know your system's going to work? I'm going to spend $10,000 in training. How do I know your system's going to work? Well, the average salesperson would go into benefits and fit. Well, I've done with this and this and this, and I've done with that. Negative reverse is, how do I know your system's going to work? Yeah, I'll tell you what, I'll guarantee my system will work. Can you guarantee me your salesperson will work the system?
Gotcha.
See how that's negative compared to what they thought I was going to do, but yet I didn't back myself into a corner.
Yeah.
I can guarantee my system work, but you can't guarantee me you'll work my system. In a way, that's a little bit negative, where the average salesperson would have gone to, oh, we've got tons of, I can give you references and da, 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 da. So does that help with the kind of the answer? Again, you must be telling me that for a reason, which means, and like those are reverses to some of these stalls in a question. I mean, you can just, when somebody gives you an answer and when you say, and, they'll provide you with more information. Well, I was thinking of I wanted to look at concrete countertops, and you don't have to say anything other than and. Well, and if that price is too high, then maybe I'll go back down to quartz or something. And when you say too high, help me understand too high. So yeah, again, most salespeople, they don't go to the fat words. Have you ever had somebody say to you, oh my God, your price is too high?
Yeah.
The reverse is, help me understand too high. Compared to what? Too high for what? And again, that's a reverse that they didn't expect. Any other salesperson, when they heard your price is too high, well, maybe there's some things we could eliminate. Maybe there's things we can cut. And the client goes, I don't want to cut anything. I want you to cut your price. I appreciate that. You want me to cut my margin. Yeah. And help me understand, what business are you in? Well, I sell da, da, da. Because everybody's in a business, sell something. So what business are you in? And what would you do when a client said they want you to cut your margin? See, again, why are you taking all this pressure to perform? Reversing helps put the pressure back on them. I always think of the old cartoon, Yosemite Sam, the old cartoon, where he's shooting at the guy. Dance for me, little man, dance for me. They're shooting at you, trying to make you dance. Stop it. Reversing helps you stop from dancing. All right, that's today's session on overcoming objection. Again, it's a little twist on understand how a lawyer does it, but you're doing the same thing. You get to play lawyer. You get to play a different role today. Questions, comments?
I was curious on narrative. Is there a time and place to have the client do a narrative statement? Because I always tell them to tell me your story to kind of open up the.
But are they going off on tangents? Are they spending time and you didn't get a chance to do your upfront contract?
Gotcha.
That's when you want to stop the narrative. When you have gone in and you're half an hour into an appointment and you haven't even set an upfront contract yet, you get to stop. Hey, I'm curious, when we first set this up, you said we had an hour. We've already spent a half hour. What else do you need to accomplish in the next half hour that we have? Do you mind if I share what I need out of the next few minutes we still have? Because many times the clients will turn a meeting into just a narrative, and at the end say, well, I got to go around. I got to go pick up the kids at school. What's your price?
Mm-hmm.
See, they're always trying, they are playing a game, and they're trying to get your price without having to give up theirs. So stop the narrative by getting back to your upfront contract.
Okay.
In the pain compartment, when you've already done upfront contract and you're in the pain compartment, yeah, let them run.
Mhm.
The more pain they have, the more, business you're going to get. But again, a lot of times they get right into the pain and you didn't even get a chance to talk about budget. So that's why I want to remember step bond and rapport, upfront contract, then pain. When they jump a step to you, you got to go back.
Yeah, I liked also what you already talked about, the homework, which was what I had in mind before that, which is just to come up with those, dozen or so typical objections that we get, just so we can have, kind of a script handy, right? Like when
Right.
we ask this, we can practice that. So
Mhm.
Yeah, we should never be in a situation where I gotta think about it. It should just, hey, I already role play. Boy, and then the other one I do is add to that is, what are questions you wish they'd ask you because you'd be a hero?
yeah,
Mhm.
And then when they don't ask you, you get to say, hey, any reason you didn't ask me if I'm part of Remodelers Advantage or any other trade associations? Any reason you didn't ask me if I'm a member of the Better Business Bureau? Any reason you didn't ask me how long I've been in business? Whatever it is that would make you look good, you get to ask that question.
nice.
All right. Glad we recorded this. Let me stop. There we go. All right. Now that we're off the record, if there's not anything